Welcome. Today, I'm looking at how 17th century writers used alchemy to prove they were telling the truth. We're going to explore how Johnson, Donne, and Herbert used technical jargon to solve a crisis of authenticity. To understand the Renaissance, we must understand alchemy, not just as a quest for gold, but as the era's primary science of transformation. At its core, alchemy is the process of stripping away the surface, the outward, often deceptive appearance of a substance, to reveal or create an essence, the true inner reality. In the Renaissance, this created a profound cultural anxiety regarding surfaces, also known as the crisis of authenticity. If a chemist can make lead look like gold, or if a person can make a lie sound like truth, how do we prove change has actually occurred? The central question of this period shifts from what is changing to how is change proven. We move from a world of blind faith to a world of assay, the technical process of testing for purity. Renaissance writers often turn to alchemical themes because alchemy offers a technical language that performs the role of that same assay. This brings us to our central concept, the bridge of expertise. In an era of deceptive surfaces, alchemy managed to provide a solution for verifying truth. This bridge creates a connection point between two worlds, moving from one filled with social uncertainty and counterfeit surfaces towards a domain of verifiable truth and spiritual safety. The bridge serves three core functions. First, verifying the unobservable. Just as an alchemist checks a metal's core, Renaissance writers use laboratory terms to reveal the hidden interior of the human soul. Second, standardizing the subjective. By subjecting human desire and morality to the hard standards of the chemical assay, they make moral arguments feel as objective as scientific facts. Third, establishing poetic authority. These writers don't just ask for the reader's trust, they gain it by using specialized expertise to separate the genuine from the counterfeit. My argument is that Renaissance writers use alchemical language in order to gain credibility. They impose technical precision to distinguish between legitimate transformation and counterfeit change. By doing so, they claim interpretive authority over matter, desire, and morality. I trace this phenomenon through Ben Jonson, John Donne, and George Herbert. In Ben Jonson's play The Alchemist, we see this crisis play out in the crowded, cynical marketplace of London. Here, alchemy is stripped of its spiritual goals and used as a tool for fraud. One of the characters in the play, Subtle, is a pseudo expert who uses the marketplace's demand for quick wealth to his advantage. In this way, Johnson shows how expertise can be weaponized. When Subtle is questioned, he doesn't offer proof, he offers a symmetry. He buries his victims under a mountain of technical jargon. Your bolt's head, your pelican, your retort, sublimation, decalques. The point is that in the marketplace, technical language is not used to enlighten, it is used to intimidate. Johnson exposes that credibility can be performance, and if you speak the language of the laboratory well enough, people will grant you authority over their gold before you ever prove you can transform it. While Johnson looks at the material world, John Donne applies alchemical logic to the inward world of desire. For Donne, the surface is the easy flowery language of traditional love poetry. He finds this insufficient because, like counterfeit gold, cheap words can fake a pure heart. If anyone can say I love you, how do we prove it is real? Donne turns the poem into a laboratory to find a standard of proof that separates base metal lust from refined golden love. In poems like A Valediction, Forbidding Morning, or Love is Alchemy, Donne uses metaphysical poetry as a spiritual furnace. In alchemy, a furnace uses intense heat to melt metal and burn away the dross, the junk and impurities, leaving only pure gold. He treats love like a metal being placed in a furnace. To Donne, if love cannot survive the heat of intellectual complexity, distance, or physical absence, it is not refined gold, it's just base metal. In a valediction forbidding mourning, he dismisses sublunary lovers whose soul is sense. Because their love is merely elemented by physical parts, it cannot survive the heat of distance. He counters this with a claim of expert purity. But we, by a love so much refined, the word refined is his technical standard of proof. It marks a love that has been purified of its physical dross until it is like gold to airy thinnest bit. Moreover, in Love is Alchemy, Donne applies this same rigor to expose false claims. He argues that most lovers are actually bad alchemists. They claim to have discovered a spiritual elixir, a perfect soul to soul connection, but they're actually just left with dross, the worthless physical residue of lust. He mocks those who hope to find that chemic spirit in mere passion. In alchemical terms, a chemical spirit is the pure essence extracted from a base metal. Don't treat the search for a soul in a purely physical encounter as a failed transmutation. In other words, he is saying that you cannot extract a spiritual essence from a purely material body. Ultimately, Donne does not use alchemical metaphors to be pretty. He uses them in order to test the lover. The difficulty of his language is the assay. Only a love that is interassured of the mind can survive the rigors of his poetic laboratory. Not every claim of passion passes. George Herbert moves this logic into the theological realm. To understand his poem, The Elixir, we must understand the technical function of the touchstone. In the 17th century, a touchstone was a dark stone used to test the purity of gold by the color of the streak if left behind when rubbed. For Herbert, the elixir, the mythical substance that turns lead to gold, is not a chemical, it is a perspective. Herbert writes, a servant with this clause makes judgery divine, who sweeps room for thy laws, makes that and thy action fine. The clause mentioned here, doing work for thy laws, is the spiritual touchstone. Notice the refinement of logic. The room sweeping does not change physically. The broom remains a broom, the dirt remains dirt. However, the spiritual status of the act is transmuted through intention. By applying this clause, the drudgery, the base metal of life, is reevaluated as divine gold. The word fine completes our bridge. In alchemical terms, it refers to 24 karat high purity gold. Herbert argues that expertise in the Christian life is the ability to use intention as a criterion, to reevaluate the ordinary into the sacred. The material world cannot be escaped, but it can be made spiritually acceptable. The question is no longer whether matter can be trusted or desire can be verified, but whether ordinary action can be spiritually reevaluated, thereby changing its moral and spiritual status. Herbert is not performing magic, he is articulating a theology of value. So, we have traced a trajectory from the fake to the tested to the transfigured. Johnson shows us that jargon can mask a lack of truth. Donne argues that intellectual rigor can verify the truth of feeling, and Herbert claims that spiritual intention can redefine the truth of action. Overall, these writers show that in a world of unstable surfaces, authority belongs to whoever controls the terms of the assay. Whether in the laboratory or the lyric, the goal is the same: to build a procedure that separates the genuine from the counterfeit.